All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Caton. I'm the Assistant Athletic Director for Communications here at Bowdoin College, and I'm pleased to be joined tonight by a pair of Bowdoin alumni with professional sports backgrounds. We have Jared Porter, the class of 2003, and Ahron Cohen of the class of 2006 joining us this evening. Jared is in his fourth year as the Senior Vice President and Assistant General Manager for the Arizona Diamondbacks. And Ahron was the Arizona Coyotes, with the Arizona Coyotes from 2015 to 2020, serving the last 2 years as President and CEO. Gentlemen, thanks for taking the time to join with us this evening.
Good to be here with you.
So I guess we're going to take the next hour or so to talk a little bit about what it was like to guide a professional sports franchise through a pandemic, which is a topic that I'm sure the two of you were not expecting to be experts in as recently as about 6 months ago, but here we are. We're hoping to have some time at the end for some questions and answers. So if any viewers want to click the chat function at the bottom of the screen, you can submit some answers or some questions, and hopefully we'll be able to get to them at the end of the talk. So before we dig into what the last few months has been like for the both of you, I had the pleasure of watching both of you as athletes here at Bowdoin and in the early 2000s. So I guess take us through your career paths to where you are now. Ahron, if you want to get us started, what the last 15 years of your professional life has taken you to.
Sure. Well, let me just start by saying before we jump into anything, just with the events of the past week and a half, it feels kind of trivial to be talking about sports during this time. But, the one thing about sports that I think is so good and positive is that it's one of the few things that brings people together. And, as we've seen over the past few days, it's a great platform for promoting, important ideals and seeing a lot of, sports leaders and athletes and executives and owners kind of take stands on these social justice issues. It's been, really good to see. With that, so, I'll jump into my background, just give a brief, summary of things so we can focus a lot of the talk on the COVID matters. But if you asked me when I was at Bowdoin, do you think you'd be in Arizona? I would have said, heck no. I really had never been to Phoenix before when I was at Bowdoin. And I knew I wanted to stay involved in sports after playing football at Bowdoin, and was looking at different law schools and different opportunities. And I ended up connecting with some people at Arizona State, went down here for a bowl game. It was about -10 in Minnesota when I left Minnesota, came down here, and it was just, beautiful sunny weather and a lot of great things going on in the Phoenix marketplace and a lot of great sports opportunities. I was able to connect with the former general counsel of the Minnesota Vikings, who's now the Big Ten commissioner, Kevin Warren, and was able to hustle an interview with him and get an internship while I was in law school at the Minnesota Vikings. And Kevin's been a great mentor of mine and really helped guided me in my sports career. And I started off practicing law at a big firm in Phoenix and did everything I could to stay involved with sports issues. And I ended up representing the owners of the Arizona Coyotes when they bought the team from the NHL in 2013. I stayed in touch with those guys, and a couple of years later in 2015, they needed a new general counsel. So they brought me on board, and I spent the last 5 years with the Coyotes, and I was general counsel, then chief operating officer, then president and CEO. And for those of you that know the Coyotes and some of the existential issues that they've dealt with over the years, Coyotes years are like dog years. So, I spent 5 human years, about 35 years in dog years or Coyotes years with the team, and just parted ways, and now spending some great time with my family and my 2 boys. And my wife's actually a Bowdoin alum as well, and working with some different people on some investment opportunities and consulting work, advising some people that are looking at sports properties.
That's great.
So that's it. Yeah.
So Jared, you played ice hockey and baseball at Bowdoin. Where did you head to right after you left Brunswick?
Yeah, so I played both sports in college. It was great. I got the chance to play for 2 great coaches, Terry Mehar and Mike Conley. Certainly learned a lot from them that I still carry with me today. But leaving school, I was really trying to get an internship with a Major League Baseball team. I really had 2 opportunities. One of them was with the Red Sox hometown team, and I ended up taking that opportunity and moving down to Fort Myers, Florida, for a year. Kind of worked my way back up through Boston. Had some great years there. I was there, I think, 04 until, towards the end of the 2015 season. At that point, I would join the Cubs for the end of 15 and all of 16. Good timing. We won another World Series championship there, kind of swooped in and was a part of that. And then from there, I got an opportunity to come work for the Diamondbacks, join a couple guys who I worked with in Boston. I come out here, and it's been great. I absolutely love it here. It's been a great place to work, great place to live, and I'm excited about the future as long as we can actually play at some point.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So obviously we're in a bit of a crazy time period, and virtually all aspects of our life have been affected by the pandemic. But I think for many of us, sports served as sort of the warning bell at first, particularly around that March 11th, the March 12th date, Rudy Gobert in the Utah Jazz. And then the NBA immediately suspended play on March 11th. So I know both of you were right in the midst of preparing for your season in Jared's case, in the middle of the playoff push for you, Ahron. Talk about what those 48 to 72 hours were like in sort of the immediate aftermath of the NBA shutting down and the NHL and MLB following suit. I'm sorry, Jared, if you want to fire away.
Okay. Yeah, either way, it's fine with me. So for us, stuff was starting to kind of trickle in before that. Obviously there was kind of some buzz around the country and the world. We all knew what may or may not be coming. I don't think any of us fully grasped the severity of what this could turn into, at least not in my world. I'm sure some people in the country did. So we had an off day on March 11th. So we were off. I was home that night, kind of seeing the reports come out on Twitter and on ESPN with the NBA cancellations. And then March 12th kind of became a crazy day for Major League Baseball. I believe some of the teams in Florida might have played their games that morning. It happened to be raining in Arizona that day, which doesn't happen very often. So we were actually able to have a rain out, which ironically enough was able to kind of help us make the decision or get more guidance from Major League Baseball. And I believe as of that night, all the games were canceled. And I think the baseball maybe was suspended either the 12th or the 13th. All kinds of NCAA schools started canceling things at that time as well. So.
Yeah, and Ahron, where were you guys at that point?
Yeah, I kind of think about this on a scale. It's just so interesting how everything evolved, really going back to about March 5th. And, obviously, like all of us, we were paying attention and following the news and seeing this spreading, in Europe and then, in certain parts of the U.S. March 5th for the NHL was a critical date because Santa Clara County actually issued it wasn't a mandate or an order, but it was a suggestion, a strong recommendation that sports teams not play games going forward. And that night, the San Jose Sharks had a game and actually played a game, as did the Golden State Warriors, as well as the San Jose Earthquakes. And they played a game, and obviously, you started to see how real this was, and you started to see different jurisdictions talking about shutting down or playing games with no fans. So from that Thursday over that weekend, and we were, I guess, I don't know if you want to call it fortunate or unfortunate, but we didn't have any games during that period until March 12th, and then we had a 5-game homestand. So from our perspective, we were trying to plan, and at that time on Thursday, we started by saying, okay, if players get sick, that's something that could automatically shut down the league. So from Thursday through that weekend, there was a lot of focus on shielding players as much as we could. This was still assuming that fans were going to be in the buildings and all of that, but trying to mitigate interaction between fans and players, and just creating social distancing as much as you can in a hockey environment for players. So we spent about 3 or 4 days nonstop talking to everybody, and not just making sure that the players were safe and having minimal interaction, but also taking measures to safeguard the arena, little things like, interactions between the ushers coming into the building with fans, or, getting food and drinks at the arena. So spent a lot of time working into that. And then that merged into the early part of that next week. And that's when you started to see, wow, this is really moving very quickly, and seeing some of the jurisdictions not, going beyond that initial kind of recommendation to a mandate. I think Columbus issued a mandate, and then some other cities shortly thereafter. So then things merged into preparation for playing our upcoming home games with no fans. And, that you can imagine the slew of issues dealing with that. And then, it's just, I'm sure, Jared can attest to this as well. It was just a lot of complexity and things moving very quickly. That whole week, I don't know if I slept that whole week. I was on the phone constantly, and, also spending a lot of time talking to our local governmental leaders and making sure that we were on the same page and we were communicating and had good dialogue. So, if we were in a situation where the government wanted to shut something down, we weren't getting blindsided, and we had, a good understanding of what was going on. And then Wednesday night hits, and Rudy Gobert, tests positive, and the NBA shuts things down. And by the way, it was an interesting thing. So we were actually on a trip in Utah a couple of weeks before that. Spent some time visiting with the Utah Jazz people, and they gave my 1.5-year-old son a Rudy Gobert jersey. So my wife actually had him in the Rudy Gobert jersey that day, took some pictures on Instagram, posted that, and then he shut it down. So people said, but it is the one NBA jersey that he has. So kind of an odd coincidence. But then that hits, and then we get an email from the commissioner of the NHL late that night scheduling a Board of Governors call for Thursday. And, that's where, certainly based upon what the NBA did, I think the expectation was something similar with the NHL. We got on a call. The Board of Governors is all the owners and, team presidents. And we got on this call, and he said, look, given that an NBA player is tested positive, and given that a number of NHL teams have followed the night after the Utah Jazz in various locker rooms throughout the country, it's inevitable that at some point very soon an NHL player is going to, get sick as well and test positive, and then it was going to shut down everything. So he made the decision to shut it down right then. And then, a lot of, things followed from that, and I didn't sleep anymore after that for a couple more nights. So it was quite a unique experience to live through. I'm happy to not be going through that week anymore, but, certainly something that I'll remember for the rest of my life.
Yeah, you talk about how it seemed like everything was moving very quickly at that point in time. The week of, and information was changing. So Jared, I mean, when was your first indication of, it moves very fast, and then all of a sudden we're in this sort of limbo land? When was your first indication that, wow, this is going to last more than a week or two? We're going to be in this sort of status quo waiting game for a little bit longer than we expected.
Yeah, so in baseball, we have I would say 3 areas where this impacted. One was our players. So, between our major league and minor league players, we had over 200 players at our facility in Scottsdale. Another one, and I guess coaches are part of that too, minor league and major league coaches. Another one is all of our scouts who are out on the road, who are evaluating high school players, college players for the draft, and then professional players for trades, or international players in the Dominican Republic, other parts of Latin America, Asia. And then the next group would be the front office. So everyone who's kind of based in Arizona, so we had to look at it kind of from 3 different angles. For us, I think first and foremost, we had to really focus on the players. What was the commissioner telling us as far as preparation for the season goes? We got similar to Ahron, it happened, started to appear like things were going to shut down, last longer. Our spring training facility is at a local a Native American. It's on their land, on reservation land. So for us, we were told by them, hey, we're shutting things down. So we were out of there. So I think when that happened, that was one big step. We could move our practices, our preparation to our stadium downtown, but that was like, oh man, this is pretty big here. And then all the colleges and the high schools started canceling their games, canceling their season. So, we had scouts that were on the road in Northern California, driving to high school games, and, who live in Florida, and were told that, hey, this game is canceled. We had scouts going, lining up their weekends to go watch SEC games in the Southeast, and that was all shut down. So those decisions were kind of made for us. And then as far as the office goes, we quickly learned how to work from home, how to work remotely on things like we're doing right now on video calls. But I would say probably the middle of the next week. So probably around the 16th or 17th is when it really sunk in. It looked like this was going to be a long layoff. We had, players starting to fly home to different parts of the country and different parts of the world even. When guys start doing that, I think it becomes pretty clear, like it's going to take a while to get things going again.
Yeah. And Ahron, how about you guys? I mean, you obviously were in the midst of the season, and, at what point did you basically talk about when to be able to send guys home, when to be able to say, hey, this is going to be a break longer than we anticipated originally?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Jared, I mean, the first kind of talking points, both from the league and then within our team, was this is a pause. And, it was just, we messaged all of our players, go home, sit there. And, one of the challenges with hockey, too, to practice, you need to be on the ice. And, you can't really get that same experience by, rollerblading or, whatever. So, everybody was sitting tight. And then, pretty early on, we started to see that, look, this is going to last for quite a while. Once you started seeing the governmental entities shutting down states or municipalities, and then you start looking at the projections. And then, we had we were in the situation where we were able to see, what was going on in Italy and Spain and how it spiked and how long the spike was lasting for. And once you start doing that, you start seeing, wow, this is going to last for a while before they open up jurisdictions. And, then you started to see events further out getting canceled. I remember Wimbledon was one of the earlier events to get canceled. I think it got canceled late March or early April. You go, wow, it's getting canceled in June and July. This is, serious. And then you see jurisdictions shutting down their governments until summer, basically. But to Jared's point, as soon as you started to have the players scatter and go home to their home countries or home states or, wherever, that's where you knew this is going to, take a while. And then bringing people back is a whole different ball of wax that I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah, so that's actually a perfect segue. I mean, it's sort of, we've been in this time in between period for a while now. And, once it was evident that the break would last longer than a week or two, how do you begin to sort of navigate those return to play conversations within your organization? Like, particularly from a health and safety perspective. And then, do you rely on experts from outside your organization, or were there internal folks who would really be sort of guiding it, or were the leagues guiding it at that point in time?
Jared, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. So from a health and wellness standpoint, I think each team kind of did their own thing. I would say for the first week or so, similar to what Ahron said, guys, we were still kind of waiting a little bit. What's this going to be? Is it going to be a short break, a long break? Once we realized it was going to be a long break, what players started to do, at least for us, was, kind of reset their off seasons a little bit. So, in baseball, typically players show up, between February 1st and 15th. And then spring training goes until the end of March. So they started to look at it, I think, almost like, okay, I'm going to pretend like it's January 1st from a typical off season. What am I doing then to kind of maintain my fitness, throwing, hitting? The good thing is that spring training was shut down just before pitchers started to really get deep into their build-up progression with their arms. So we feel like from a health standpoint, it should be okay. Now the issue becomes, okay, when we come back, how quickly do they have to get ready? Are we going to have, what are we doing right now to make sure guys are getting ready? Are we having them simulate games yet, or is it still too early? We don't know if we're going to come back yet. So, we're monitoring it all very closely. We have a little bit of a unique situation in Arizona with baseball, with our spring training facility and our major league stadium in the same city. So a good number of the players on our roster live here in Arizona. So they're able to do some things in some small groups, socially distanced, of course. We're doing some stuff, kind of semi-organized, optional stuff at our two facilities now in very small groups. So we're doing everything we can to monitor stuff. You know, we actually have Zoom calls with our different position groups, our pitchers and catchers, our hitters, our coaches, at least once a week, talking through all this stuff. Our medical staff is checking in with our players 2 to 3 times a week through the minor leagues and the major leagues. So to answer your question, there's a lot going into it, but I feel like we're on top of it, but we'll see what the future holds. And I think we'll probably learn a lot this year if we do end up having a season with regards to health and wellness.
Yeah. Ahron, how did you guys sort of navigate those return to play conversations?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this has been, driven by the league, Commissioner Bettman, Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly, with, input from the different teams and the stakeholders involved. They're similar to what I said earlier about the different iterations of, before we canceled games. A similar discussion, happened with what happens when we return to play. I think the ideal scenario from everybody's perspective would have been, hey, we have a pause, we have a break, and then we're able to return to play, finish the regular season, then go into the playoffs and do all of this with fans. When it became impractical to do that, and I think people generally understood that it's just not going to be a safe environment to include fans over the summer and as we try to finish out the season, then things shifted to, okay, well, we're going to play with no fans. What does that look like? Do we finish up the regular season? Do we jump right into a playoff format? There's a lot of complexities with that. If you invite back all of the teams to finish off the regular season, there's a lot of teams who are already clearly out of the playoffs that weren't going to make the playoffs. And, players are human beings. I mean, they have families and the discussion revolving, at least within the NHL, is doing this in limited hub cities, so everybody's flying in and kind of isolating. And I think the view was the players that aren't on playoff teams don't really want to do that. And, that I know that's going on right now in the NBA, that discussion as well. So then that morphed into, okay, well, let's just have the playoff teams. And, the concern is different. There's a lot of bubble teams and teams that were close to the playoffs. So what's kind of focused right now, or the structure that's been put into place now at the NHL level, is to have 24 teams return and have a play-in round to get to the final 16. So basically 8 teams in each conference would play in this best of 5 play-in, and then the top 4 teams would have byes essentially, and then go into the regular playoffs, all without fans, all in hub cities. They haven't selected the hub cities yet, but these issues are massively, massively complicated. As Jared pointed out as well, there's so many different factors going into all of this, and player preparation, and these are human beings. So and for us, I mean, this is the longest period of time. Now guys are starting to skate as jurisdictions have opened up a little bit, but before then, month or two, this is the longest any of our guys, really any NHL player, has been off the ice their whole career. And, it's not a light switch where you can just say, come back tomorrow, and then we're going to start playing games. So, first phase is getting them, acclimated and training and going through some conditioning work. And then there's going to need to be a training camp. And then you're going to need to jump into the playoffs. And, this has ripple effects, because then this pushes back the start of next season. Normally the NHL season starts in October. If you're playing playoffs, into August and September, or even September into October, not going to be able to play again in November. So that pushes games back. And then I know Major League Baseball is working through this as well. There's massive, CBA and economic issues that need to get worked through and sorted through with the players. And, the NHL, came forward with an announcement as to the structure, but, hasn't yet worked out all the details of what the economics look like. It'd be interesting to see how that, comes in, factors out over the next few weeks, and hopefully, people can reach solutions here and we can start having sports again.
Yeah, I mean, you speak about the layers of complexity in every issue, and Jared's probably in the thick of it right now. There's obviously a lot of things that Major League Baseball is talking about in return to play proposals, but from the perspective of an organization, Jared, one of the ideas that was being floated was obviously changing divisions to geographical alignment. And how do you prepare as an organization for as being in the National League, a universal DH, or scouting versus teams that you wouldn't normally see in the regular season. How do you as an organization approach that?
Yeah, so I think specifically for us with the DH, in a way, I think a lot of major league teams, National League teams are like this. They're kind of built for it now. Teams are kind of prioritizing, whether it's platoon setups or getting players rest, getting them off their feet for a day in the field, and letting them, even DH and interleague play and things like that. So I think that's pretty much set. I mean, some are better off than others, but I think it definitely creates an opportunity for players that I'm excited about, for us. The other thing, the geographic stuff is a little challenging. I mean, we'd still be playing against the National League West teams who we play against a lot, every year. And then I would imagine it would be something like the National League West and the American League West if they end up, going with alignment like that, if we play like kind of as been discussed. And, it's tough. And we interleague play now is relatively prominent in baseball. So we play the AL West, we play the American League a good amount. So nothing will change that much. I think if you look through it, you might, the AL Central, for example, has been a weaker division in baseball for the last 5 or so years. The Royals, the Tigers, and the White Sox have all been rebuilding, and the Twins are, a strong team, and the Indians are always pretty solid. So you start looking at, I wish I was in the NL Central, because then we'd have the AL Central, but at the same time, like, the NL Central is really deep. The Twins are really good. The White Sox are trying to take a step forward this year. So it's tough. You can go crazy, I think, if you try to dissect it too much. I think the most important thing we have to do is worry about our own team, worry about our own preparation, worry about our guys, making sure we're in the best shape, making sure we're prepared to play. I think if you start to think too much about the opponent, you're going to lose anyway. So we're doing our best to stay engaged with our guys, both mentally and physically. We do anticipate, a year like this taking a mental strain on players. I don't know if you guys read the Michael Phelps article on ESPN recently. He talks about it, and that's real in my opinion. So, making sure you really focus in on every little area with your own player, making sure your guys are prepared to go out there and play every night. I do believe that's the most important thing. So that's where we're focused, but it'll be interesting. I think to answer your question, Jim, I think we're all so starving to play baseball. We don't care who it's against or how many fans are there or what league we're in. We just want to play and get the opportunity to go back out there and maybe try to normalize things a bit for ourselves and hopefully the rest of the country, give people some live content to watch.
Yeah, so you're talking about, potential opportunities to get back to play. And Ahron, you sort of referenced it a little bit in potential change in playoff structure for the NHL for this coming season. Would there potentially be opportunities there, that may be unforeseen, that the leagues, both NHL and MLB, could take advantage of, trying some new and different ideas, trying some new structures, trying some new ways to go about divisional play, that may be an opportunity that wouldn't have otherwise arisen if not for this?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is, absolutely. I mean, adversity breeds innovation. And, a lot of times, I mean, all the big four leagues, as well as MLS, and, I mean, it's kind of, been going like this for a while. I mean, there's been a lot of increased valuations and things have been pretty good. Now everybody's facing some adversity. And, you look at what the world looks like over the next, year or so, especially for live sporting events. And it's a little scary. Certainly, from the NHL's perspective, the rest of this season, essentially we lost 20% of our home games. That's 20% of the revenues. You look at the playoffs, hopefully if we're able to go forward or the NHL goes forward with this plan, you're still, mitigating as much of the media money loss that you can. So you're getting close to full freight there. But you're not getting any of the gate receipts. And, NHL, I think, compared to NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, is a little heavier on gate receipt revenues than some of the others with their media money. So that's a big hit. And then you look into next year, too. there might or might not be fans in the buildings. And, what does that look like? I mean, there are probably significant losses for a lot of these sports teams. So, what do you have to do? You have to be innovative, and you have to come up with new ways to engage fans and promote sponsorable assets. Historically, the NHL has been, you look at hockey in Europe, for instance, and they have, their entire uniforms or, their sweaters are marked up with sponsors, and the ice is all marked up with sponsors. And, historically, you haven't seen too much of that in the NHL. Do you start seeing a fast track into new sponsorable opportunities? And then, can technology enhance the fan experience moving forward? One thing I heard of that's really interesting is setting up a lot of different camera angles within an empty arena, so fans, rather than just watching the normal feed, can truly experience what it's like to be sitting on the glass or sitting behind the goal or wherever. So things like that are really cool, and I think just a lot of times teams and leagues haven't really been too focused on that because life's been pretty good, and it's easier to just focus on incremental gains, on selling a couple more tickets or selling a couple more sponsorships. But now you really have to redefine who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jared, I mean, baseball has toyed with a number of these ideas over the last 5 to 10 years. Do you see potentially any new and different techniques taking hold there in the next year or two?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Ahron, and kind of to double down on the VR, the virtual reality kind of the stuff he was bringing up at the end, like that has been. I've actually seen some of the cameras, and what you'd be doing is you could pick a seat at Chase Field or Fenway Park or Yankee Stadium and pay to sit in that seat for from that visual perspective. And I think, at least for the last couple of years, I'm sure it's the same in hockey, it's been presented to us as an extra, a way for the fan at home to enjoy things better, kind of as an add-on. Now it could become our lifeline, this year, next year. And I have no idea if that technology is ready for 2020. It would surprise me if it is. But yeah, I certainly think like technology is going to play have a huge part in it. I mean, whether from something like that to just, superimposing advertisements on fields during games so you can see things. I know there's been a lot of talk of players being more open than ever to kind of be mic'd up during games, like during the live action, to wear microphones so, fans can experience that. And baseball is going to have to do it. And I think one difference for us that that's discussed a little bit is that teams haven't really made any money this year in baseball. In hockey and basketball, and Ahron could probably give a higher percentage. They've at least made a significant percentage of their revenues for the season, given where they were at in their seasons. And we haven't had any gate revenue opportunities. Our TV revenues are paid by games played by the RSNs, the local networks, the regional networks. So I think that makes it really challenging for baseball. And as we can see with kind of the discrepancy of opinions between the owners and the players, like, these owners aren't flush. Most of them aren't flush with cash. So it does make things challenging for a season. And yes, we kind of had this conversation offline before this started. And, I believe that people are going to have to kind of put their tradition and their pride to the side a little bit and be more open to innovation and creative ways to engage fans, make the experience better, and generate revenues.
Yeah. So sort of picking up on that subject, a little bit about the economic impact of playing games, not playing games. You're both located within about a 15, 20 square mile radius, the Coyotes and the Diamondbacks. And what can you speak a little bit to, what the economic impact is in the greater Phoenix and Glendale area as to, we've lost all of those Coyote home dates and a number of Arizona Diamondback home dates. What is that like for the local economy and the local businesses, Ahron?
Yeah, I mean, it's with this pandemic that we're dealing with, I really haven't met anybody that's unaffected by this in a negative way. If you have, let me know who that is, because maybe they can help out investing in some things. But yeah, it's just really across the board, everybody's been hit so hard with this, and in particular live sporting events. I mean, situations where people are engaged in mass gatherings. And you think of all the different ripple effects, and you think about, what does a sports team mean to an economy, in terms of job creation and tax benefits and, all these different things. Everything's taken a hit. And, you think, and there's a lot of different partners that we have. The Diamondbacks have them as well. Levy, the concessionaire, all these people, lost out on games to work. Our arena management company, ASM, all the ushers and staff members that they have, with everything shut down, everybody's feeling the pain from this. And then, certainly a lot of the sports teams, as well as the Coyotes organization, people have to make some really difficult decisions in terms of keeping people on board. And I know a lot of businesses have had to deal with furloughs and layoffs, and it's just a really, sad time in this country. And I know so many people are hurting, and that's the one thing, that's the beauty of sports. It has escapism, right? It can take people away from some of the challenges and difficult things of everyday life. And, I don't know about you guys. I can only watch so many reruns of, Diamondbacks games from like 2011 and, stuff like that. I mean, everybody's just dying for live content. And, to Jared's point about the mic'd up thing, I mean, I think that's going to be I think everybody's going to do that over the summer. And it's going to be so powerful. Just, we all watched the charity golf tournament with Brady and Manning, and just seeing that engagement and seeing that peek behind the curtain. That's what so many people crave with sports, and having that opportunity where maybe previously, teams or players or coaches have said, no, we don't want to do this because, it's a distraction or whatever. Well, now it's really, hey, we got to throw everything at the wall, and we got to kitchen sink this to create great content.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you referenced it a little bit with the engagement piece. I mean, Jared, I think at least, there is some confidence that sports will be back soon. What has the organization, what have the Diamondbacks done specifically to try to remain engaged, both within the local community, but, with fan base and the greater community at large?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there's certainly been challenges, to it. I think what, and I know Ahron was tremendous leader in this area with the Coyotes. I think there's a very charitable side to what we do in professional sports, and Diamondbacks is, something we certainly promote. So I know we've tried to do some things at some different shelters, whether it's kind of packing meals, socially distanced, giving money to different places that might need it from our foundation. I think things as simple as that. And as far as player and fan engagement goes, social media has been a good place for that. Whether it's Instagram or like TikTok's become pretty big now. I haven't really dove into that one yet. Facebook, Twitter, all those areas, we've tried to use all those to engage the fans. And it's a little challenging, I think, because, for better or for worse, like I mentioned earlier, there is a negotiation going on right now in baseball. So, and players are also trying to, stay healthy, stay away from people as much as they can, isolate, prepare for the season. So I think there's a balance of not asking too much of guys through a time like this. But I also think there's so many players that want to be out there, want to be helping, are asking to do things. And I think those guys are doing a great job. And I know the Diamondbacks are trying to stretch our reach as far as we can in the region.
Yeah, and I know, Ahron, this was something that you were really proud of with the Coyotes, the relationships that you built within the local community there. Can you talk about what the role is of sport and is sort of leaders within the community, and what it would mean for those teams to return to play as we proceed to the new normal, as they say?
Yeah. I mean, even before this, one of the things that kind of shaped my leadership was certainly being at Bowdoin and learning about the common good and really ingraining that, trying to ingrain that in the culture of our staff. And, trying to get everybody to understand with the Coyotes organization that, getting away from this idea that we're a hockey team and really trying to see us as something bigger than that, trying to see us as a community asset who happens to play hockey. And that's something that, I was really proud of during my time with the team of really, finding ways to engage with the community. And when this all happened, I remember telling our staff over a Zoom call, I said, now's our opportunity to really step up and lead and show this community how we can help, whether it be donating with food banks or blood banks or we kind of categorize things into different buckets. I mean, one was just us making donations to worthy causes that need our help, and then you have this platform as a sports team. So we were also using our platform to be a community resource where people could go to get important information, and also just raise awareness for worthy causes. So, one of the things right off the bat when COVID was hitting everybody in early March, food banks were just getting absolutely crushed. As you guys can remember, when everybody was hoarding toilet paper and, canned goods and everything, obviously there's fewer donation items then. People are worried about their, stocking their own, cupboards, and people didn't want to get out to food banks. And then you couple that with so many people getting laid off and furloughed and really going through hard times. There's just tremendous needs. So we saw an opportunity to really, myself and our general manager went with the governor to a food bank and raised awareness and really tried to use our platforms to promote that and see, an increase with our fans of supporting those things. So I just think it's so critical that sports teams really step up during these challenging times. And, once we do get back and teams are playing again and uniting the community, I think it's going to be even more important to really, bring people together and raise awareness for important causes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for that. I guess I want to sort of close the scripted part of our conversation, talking a little bit about the long term, picking up on what you were referring to, Ahron. Obviously, there's a lot left to figure out, but I guess, how do you see this crisis affecting sort of the future of professional sports at large? What might this new normal look like, both in the stadiums and out of the arena, in the arenas and in the practice fields? I mean, Jared, obviously you've got, a big week or two coming up with Major League Baseball. What are we looking at long term?
Man, I think the simplest answer is I don't know. I don't think that's a bad one. I really don't. I can give you some thoughts. I first and foremost, like Ahron mentioned when we started this call, we're at a crossroads in this country right now. Outside of sports, with the pandemic and with some of the social justice issues going on right now. So first and foremost, I really hope all that stuff can get sorted out. I'm hopeful that there will be a vaccine or a treatment for the coronavirus at some point in the next 12 months. So I think those things need to kind of work themselves out separately from sports. But I'm hopeful. I mean, I agree with Ahron about the opportunity for people to be creative and to innovate. I think it's going to provide a chance for and trust me, I'm as much of a traditionalist, when I go to Fenway Park or Yankee Stadium or Dodger Stadium as anybody. It's great walking in there and seeing the old uniforms and the tradition. But I do think that, personally, I believe the times have changed a bit. I do think there needs to be more innovation, more creativity, more fan engagement. Baseball specifically needs to continue to push to make sure we don't lose the young fan. We want to gain the young fan. So I think there's a real opportunity for that. But I really think a lot of how things happen are going to be dictated by science, and by the medical profession. I think in the short term, I'm very hopeful that we're going to have a season this year. I know that both sides do really want to play. From everything I've heard, I know we have a very smart commissioner who's a great leader, who is trying to come up with a solution with our owners and with our players to have a season. And I have faith in them that, if science and medicine allows us to do that my gut feeling is that I'm optimistic. I'm hopefully optimistic. But I also, I agree with Ahron, this doesn't just stop in 2020. I mean, the projections for 2021 aren't great right now, but that could change. It could get better. It could get worse. So I think for us, we're preparing for everything. We're trying to figure out ways to prepare for the best case scenario, for the worst case scenario. I'm hopeful that we play, and it'll be interesting to see the future as far as our stadium. Do they become more socially distanced? Are we going to learn from this that pandemics like the one we're in the middle of right now, are going to become more, there's going to be more opportunity for them in the future to grow. And so I think we have a lot to learn from that, but I'm optimistic for the future of sports. I think we all miss it. We all love it. I think that's one thing that this has taught us is that, it is, whether you're a diehard sports fan or not, it is part of the American fabric, and something that we need to really work hard to get back.
Yeah. Thoughts on that, Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to Jared. I'm an optimist in this regard. I just think our country and our world loves and needs sports so much. I think the need to consume sports is going to remain throughout this entire pandemic, and is going to continue long thereafter. I think how people consume sports is certainly going to be significantly impacted for a while here. I mean, I really see this lasting over the next year, certainly. If you want to bucket people, I mean, I think that there's a bucket of people right now that you could open up the stadiums and arenas and they would show up tomorrow, whatever, they're ready to go. I think there's a bucket of people that no matter what safeguards you take, no matter what you tell them, they're not coming to, a live sporting event, especially not an arena, enclosed arena, until we get a vaccine. And then there's this big group in the middle. I mean, it's kind of similar to politics in that regard, I think. I think, if there's the right safeguards in place, from the venue standpoint and just from a medical and technological standpoint, where people feel that, their risk is low if they're going to come to an event and experience live sports, I think you can get them out. But there certainly will be a diminution to the number of people attending events over the next year. You couple that with the economic strain, throughout the country, and how that impacts people buying tickets and sponsorships and all sorts of things. So I think sports can be looking at a difficult time for the next year or so, but I know that sports is going to make it through, and especially with innovation, I think that's going to yield some new revenue streams that people haven't really thought of yet. The one thing I will warn, though, the one place where my optimism might wane a little bit is, given everything going on in this country, given the tremendous economic strain that so many people are feeling, these leagues really need to come together and figure out solutions to return to play. If it's medically safe, but leagues don't come back because billionaire owners are fighting with millionaire players over money, I think that's going to be very, very poorly received by the American public and really the global public. And, I'm hopeful that people can reach these resolutions, because I think it's important for everybody.
Absolutely.
I agree. Yeah.
Great. Guys, thanks for your thoughts, and I've got a couple of audience questions here that I'll toss out to you. Some a little more detailed than others, some a little light, but first question from Jeff Dugan. I'm curious to hear about how both organizations you have been associated with have leveraged advanced analytics to evaluate players and inform both personnel and game strategy decision-making. So Jared, I know you probably have never heard that question before, but talk a little bit about the Diamondbacks analytical plans and in scouting.
Yeah, I mean, everywhere I've worked, starting back with the Red Sox in 2004 under Theo Epstein, it's been a big part of what we've done. Is blending the analytics with the traditional evaluations, meshing things. It's always been a huge part of the evaluations we've made. What I think has become more interesting since I've got to Arizona specifically is just the accuracy and the different ways in which we are able to get this analytical information. It's not just the statistics we see now, how they're blended. It's actually the movement of the baseball when it comes out of the pitcher's hand. It's the velocity of the ball when it comes off a hitter's bat. It's the sprinting speed for an outfielder from center field to left field. And on top of that, there's so many smart, creative people that are innovating and creating these new technologies that we're really able to. The greatest frontier right now, in my opinion, isn't necessarily the evaluation of players. It's the development of players, the coaching of players, and how analytics touches every single player that puts on a Diamondbacks uniform, from the from the 16-year-old that we sign in the Dominican Republic or in Venezuela or in Curacao to the best player on our major league team, they are all, you know, from the second they put the Diamondbacks uniform on, analytics is part of their everyday life. It's part of their preparation. It's part of their development. It's part of their physical workout. It's part of their mental skills. It's all encompassing. It touches everything. And I think it is incredibly critical to have a successful organization, to be a consumer of all new information, and analytics certainly is a huge part of that.
Yeah, and as just a quick follow-up for you, Jared, on that one, I mean, you've been in Major League Baseball now for 15 years. Have you seen the progression of the acceptance of that during that time period? Or I know you've always been in analytical rich organizations, but at least with some of the veteran players at first that were hesitant to now potentially players being more able to embrace it.
Yeah, for sure. I think everyone wants to get better, you know, and I think what's happening now is that the new analytic tools they have a better way of speaking to players. You know, it's not they make more sense. You know, a player can throw a pitch in a bullpen with a high-speed video camera on him, and right after his pitch, he can take a step back with the pitching coach, look at a monitor, and see exactly the angle his arm was at when he threw it, exactly where his fingers were when he gripped the baseball, and what that made the baseball do when it went from his hand to home plate. They can actually see it in front of them immediately. There's immediate return. So yes, I think there's much greater acceptance. I think the same thing goes with scouting. I think for a long time, you know, the scouting and analytics butted heads a little bit. That doesn't happen as much anymore. I think the analytics now, you know, supports the scouting. The best scouts are open to the analytics. How can this help me become a better scout, a better evaluator? So I think that's certainly changed. You know, it doesn't mean that it's perfect or that there still aren't some outliers, but yeah, way more accepted now. Players want to get better, scouts want to get better, organizations want to make the best decisions they possibly can. So yeah, for sure.
And I know, Aaron, you know, everybody, when they thinks of athletics or analytics in sports, they immediately baseball comes to mind. But I know the NHL is, you know, hockey, professional hockey is making major strides in that. Can you talk a little bit about what the Coyotes had been doing to implement some of that?
Yeah, and I mean it's so different, right? I mean, baseball, you have this event that occurs. You know, the pitcher throws a pitch, and you know there's so many things that you can do there. In hockey, you have a bunch of guys skating around on the ice, and you have kind of organized chaos. So you know, over the years, I think, and you know, just kind of the old school nature of hockey, I think in certain markets, certain general managers, I mean, they've been a little reluctant to adopt a more analytical approach. You know, something we prided ourselves on with the Coyotes is being really at the forefront of that. Our general manager was kind of the money puck guy, the first money puck guy before he became our general manager. He ran a hockey analytics firm that advised different NHL teams on advanced analytics. And, you know, that's something that you know, we have a big focus on. You know, something that Jared mentioned that I, you know, completely agree with is you know, there's so much of a focus when people talk about analytics in terms of player evaluation and recruitment of players. You know, I think the new kind of forefront of analytics is development of your asset. And, you know, after you're drafting in both MLB and National Hockey League, the players drafted usually aren't jumping into the pro team right away. So there's this cultivating of the player, and from a sports science approach and different, you know, things that you can do to give your player an edge or grow the culture, ingrain him into, you know, your organizational philosophy with how you do things. That stuff's critically important. And something that I'm really proud of with our team, and yeah, Jared and the Diamondbacks have been phenomenal resources. There's a great amount of thought leadership sharing and you know, understanding of best practices from the Diamondbacks that our guys have taken advantage of. I spend a lot of time with the D-backs that you don't really get as much within, you know, we're not going to go over to the Boston Bruins and, you know, ask them tips on developing their players. But, you know, certainly in different leagues, you see much more than that. And, you know, I think the teams that are really progressive in that approach and constantly looking to learn and you know, gain little tidbits from other teams are going to see great strides moving forward.
Yeah, and sort of related to that somewhat, we had a couple of questions in regards to sports psychology and mental health. And, can you talk a little bit about Jared, about what the Diamondbacks have in place to help both, with not only the analytical part of the game, but the mental edge, trying to get the mental edge when you're out there on the field?
Yeah, so we came over to the Diamondbacks before the 2017 season, a group of us, myself, our other assistant GM and our GM. They came from the Red Sox, where I was with them, and I came from the Cubs. And one of the things that was interesting when we came over was, the Diamondbacks didn't have a lot of kind of things that we would consider, to use one of Ahron's terms, like best practice, like in place. And one of those was mental skills. In Boston and Chicago, it was part of our everyday life for our players for a long time. And we came to Arizona, and it wasn't really part of their development or what they provided. So it actually, it offered an opportunity for us to kind of build this up and start from scratch, which was actually great. I specifically did a lot. I traveled around the country, met with different people, different places. We ended up hiring a coordinator of mental skills. He now has 2 assistants, 1 Spanish speaker, 1 woman. We're trying to create as much diversity within that department as we can, because we believe that, people connect with different types of people. And, if you could kind of build a mental skills department of the same personality or same background, person, then it's not going to work as well. So it's kind of twofold for us. We feel like it's a curriculum in development. So, right when we draft players or sign players or trade for players in the minor leagues, if we get them kind of ingrained in our mental skills curriculum. It's the mindfulness, the meditation, the self-thought, the different tools, the breathing that we might teach them over the course of their minor league career. And then at the major league level, it's there. We have to be a little more careful. We have players coming from a lot of different places. There are different points in their lives and their careers. So it's almost like it's not as forced on them, if it makes sense. There's a mental skills presence in our clubhouse. And the good thing is, like, as players start to come up through our minor league system, onto our major league team, it's part of their everyday life. So the other guys see, hey, that guy over there is talking to Zach, our mental skills coordinator. Like, I wonder what he's talking to him about. Let me go over there and try to see what they're talking about too. So I think just that way it's growing at the major league level. And then, of course, anytime there's a mental health issue, I think there's a difference between, mental skills, kind of preparation for a game, preparation for an at-bat, learning how to deal with failure day to day with performance. That's different than mental health, substance abuse or, things that maybe are happening out of the field that could be harmful to a player. So we do have a 1 full-time psychiatrist on staff, and then 2 others that help him. So if there's a mental health issue that comes to mind, that we will refer that player more to our EAP group, it's called, rather than our mental skills coaches. But it has a huge presence with us. Our manager, Tori Lavello, is a huge believer and proponent of it, similar to how Joe Madden was when I was in Chicago. And that's kind of where it starts. He looks at it like it's another coach, and hopefully over time, our players will start to do the same thing more often.
Yeah, Ahron, you want to talk a little bit about what the Coyotes had invested in that particular part of it?
Yeah. I mean, we're actually learning a lot from the Diamondbacks in terms of mental skills and kind of getting in the right mindset with things. From an evaluation standpoint, we have a team psychologist that we work with that meets with all the different prospects and evaluates them and creates an analytical tool for us to evaluate, what we think of this prospect. But to your point with mental health, it's such an important issue, for people throughout the country, especially young people. I know that's an issue that, a lot of colleges and universities deal with throughout the country. I sit on an advisory board here, a sports advisory board at ASU, and we had a board retreat several months ago. There are about 10 ADs throughout the country that are on this advisory board, and we had to go around the room and talk about the biggest issue each of us is facing. Every single one of the ADs, and these are big Power 5 universities, every single one of them said mental health of their student athletes. And at our level with the NHL, Major League Baseball, a lot of these prospects, aren't going to college, or they're just going to college for a year. They're playing junior hockey, and they have so much stress placed on them from expectations and kind of rigid schedules and all of that. And, they can be the best hockey player on the planet, but those are things that can really derail their careers, and just, overall, want everybody to, be best off for their own well-being. So, that's something that, I hope continues to, expand. I think the Diamondbacks do a phenomenal job. That's something that, I think the Coyotes continue to learn and get better with in terms of really, addressing the holistic issues for an athlete and making sure that they're ready to go.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for that, guys. So it is a Bowdoin panel, so I'm just going to bring you back to Bowdoin here for a couple of seconds as we get close to the end. Could you share with me really quickly a favorite Bowdoin sports memory or an influential teammate, player, coach that you want to talk about right now? Jared, fire away.
Yeah, so for me, I played two sports. I'll talk quickly about both of them. For me, it was really any Bowdoin Colby hockey game was great. It was fun. I was lucky enough to play, I think, in 8 or 9 of them. I think my freshman year I might have played them 3 times over the course of my career there in hockey. And then in baseball, I always felt like Ivy's weekend was awesome. That it was if it was a nice day out and we were out there playing a baseball game, we got crowds, and it was great. And then as far as I learned a lot from both of my coaches, I think in different ways, but I think the one thing I learned from both of them is the importance of strong communication, transparency, and honesty when it comes to dealing with people and with athletes. I feel like with Coach Mehar and Coach Conley, it was always consistent. It was honesty. It was direct. You knew exactly where you stood, where they stood. Both guys, I feel like, were great listeners, and I mean that as a compliment. I think it's very easy to tell when a coach or someone isn't listening to you, and I've tried to take that with me wherever I've gone. So I know it's not one thing or one person, but I really believe that those things I mentioned, are things that I carry with me every day and have had a huge influence on helping me get to where I am right now.
Aaron, how about you?
Yeah. I gotta say, any memory of any Bowdoin sport playing Colby and beating up on Colby. We unfortunately didn't do a lot of that when I was playing football, so I had to watch Jared beat up on Colby playing hockey and baseball. But yeah, just the great rivalry, the CBB and in particular Colby. And I remember those cold football games when it's about 5-10 degrees outside, the last game of the season, and it's just a tremendous rivalry. I wish everybody throughout the country could experience that, or I tell all my friends out in Arizona, you got to get up to Maine at some point and experience that, because that's just true competition at 2 great universities, but not as great as Bowdoin, obviously, for Colby. And then coaches, the late great coach Phil Soule was just such a phenomenal person, and really loved spending time with him, and just his passion for life and passion for Bowdoin and passion for Bowdoin football was just so fun to be a part of. And we dearly miss him. And then Coach Sullivan, who's still there, was a great coach of mine. When he was always screaming at me, yelling at me for screwing up as a running back. I would miss a hole that his offensive line would create for me, and he would get pretty fired up. But just wonderful memories, and certainly miss my time at Bowdoin.
That's great. And I just wanted to close out with this. I mean, we may have a couple of students watching, and I know this will be recorded and put online later. So just, 2 cents from each of you on, if a Bowdoin student is looking to break into the professional sports world, what advice or tip or any words of wisdom you can give them, if you want to start off, Jared.
Yeah, I'll do specific to baseball, I guess. One thing I always say, I wish I spoke Spanish fluently. So baseball specific, try to learn Spanish if you can. It's a great way to kind of get your foot in the door. That's kind of just one point. I would say have an openness to going anywhere to start your career. I mean, Aaron talked about it early in his in this talk tonight, how he wound up in Arizona, and I did the same thing. I picked up my bags and moved to Florida immediately when the Red Sox gave me an opportunity. So be open to going out on your own. And then once you do get a job, the one piece of advice I always give to people is dominate the job that you're in. You're gonna get your next job by doing really well. You're gonna get your promotion or your next job by doing the job that you're currently in to the best of your abilities. Focus on the job you're in. Don't focus on your next step. And success will come and you're going to get opportunities.
Aaron, how about you?
Great. Yeah, I think you just need to make yourself an asset. If you listen to the talk from both Jared and we don't know what the next year and a half, the future of sports, we don't know what that looks like. And, you juxtapose, the sports industry, and I know a number of other industries from, where I came from. I was an M&A attorney. And, law firms are traditionally very hierarchical. And you're a young associate. There's no way you're going to get opportunities to do things that a partner or a senior partner, can do. In sports, it's all different. I mean, this is a great opportunity where, everybody's looking for innovation. Everybody's looking for ways to get ahead over this next year and a half and really change the sports landscape, change that dynamic. So, it's a great opportunity for young people to dive in, do research on things. They can change the game. They can come up with a great idea. They can make themselves an asset, even if you're an intern or an entry-level person with a team. So, look for these opportunities to really shine and change the world. And to Jared's point, I mean, look, especially in the sports and entertainment world, it's going to be a little rocky over the next little bit. You hear about stories of a lot of teams cutting back, and I don't really know many teams that are saying, look, we're going on a hiring spree right now. So, especially students that are, getting close to graduation or looking for internships or things like that, I think you have to be a little more creative than, traditionally you might have, been able to just jump on into a team or into an internship. So, I think you have to find new ways to network, to connect with people, to learn as much as you can. But the thing I will say is don't be discouraged because, I know that we're going to get through this and I know that there's going to be great opportunities for sports ahead. So, keep on fighting and digging and you'll find your spot.
That's great. Aaron, Jared, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was great. It was a lot of fun. Really appreciate the time and wish both of you the best of luck moving forward.
Thanks so much, Jim.
Great. Thank you.
Go Bears.
Go you Bears. Absolutely. For viewers interested in more programs like this, please visit alumni.bowdoin.edu for a complete listing of upcoming virtual events. So thanks again, everyone, and have a great evening.